All right, so recording on the computer, and I do believe we are about to go live.
Great.
Just wait for it to come up and announce to the world that we are live. Come and join us for some raw and honest conversation today. Hello world, hello Facebook group. Thank you so much for joining us. Today I am graced with Pauline's presence. Me and her got along straight away from day dot, probably because she mentioned what she does and I was like, I need you in my life. So Pauline here is a pelvic floor therapist. If you're wondering what on earth a pelvic floor therapist does, then she will explain that. If you're wondering why this video is for you as well, I just wanted to note that the main things that we're going to talk about today are the anatomy and why it matters to know. So regardless of whether this ends up being a talk for you, it's always great to know a little bit more about your body. So stay tuned for that at least. The 3 phases of strengthening your pelvic floor, and her tried and tested methods for strengthening your pelvic floor. And like I said, if you're wondering why this is important to you to watch, so you can stop leakage, enjoy pain-free sex, you can speed up your postpartum recovery bounce back, improve gym performance, boost your confidence today, and they are just a few of the benefits that you're going to get from this talk today. So I'm going to do very little talking. You'll be very pleased to know this week. I'm pretty much going to hand it over to Pauline. She's fantastic. Please introduce yourself, you wonderful lady.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a topic I love talking about. And while it typically sometimes shocks people, or a lot of times, like when you and I first had that conversation, women will say to me, oh, I need you. I absolutely need you. So I am a physical therapist or physiotherapist, however you want to call it. I went to physical therapy school just like any other physical therapist that might help with knee pain or back pain. But early on, I realized, and that's a story for another day, I want to give you actionable take-home steps to use, not just fluff about how I got into this, but I saw early on that there was a really big need. And my life has been graced with women who have struggled with so many different things, so many different struggles. And it was clear to me that there's answers for all of this. And I would not be in a great place if I just chose to ignore that. So I have taken on treating the pelvic floor in full. And the pelvic floor, which oftentimes I'll say, people might say, oh yeah, you only have a problem with that if you're a woman or if you've had a baby. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to say it, you can have problems with your pelvic floor before babies, after babies. Men have pelvic floors too, but we're not necessarily talking about their potential issues. I want to give you actual things that you can utilize today. So your pelvic floor, if you were to go look it up online, you would probably see it as a bunch of muscles that line the bottom of your pelvis. There's some that like to explain it, it's the bottom of the bowl, it's like a hammock. And while that's a really great way to say it, I also feel like it doesn't give that pelvic floor credit for what it actually does, but also how complex it is. So I often like to explain the pelvic floor because there's 3 layers. I like to explain it as a doorway that leads to a hallway that leads to a big circular living room. Because oftentimes I think we have no idea of what's even happening down there. We might put a tampon there, we might put a cup there, we might put a disc there, we use it for sex, a baby comes out, and that's about all that we know. And while it may not necessarily matter entirely that you have a fantastic understanding of the muscles and what they're called and those, because I don't think that part matters, but just to understand some of the complexity. So if you were to walk through that doorway or the vaginal opening, of course, there's not a door there, but we have coverings, your labia majora, your labia minora. As you part back those curtains, if you will, and you walk through that doorway, there's going to be a door frame. That's your first layer of your muscles. As you walk into that hallway, the floor, the ceiling, the right wall, the left wall, that makes up your second layer of muscles. And this is where the tampon would sit. This is the birth canal that women will often reference when they're giving birth or that type of a thing. As you continue down that hallway, as odd as it sounds, you take a step down and you're now in this circular living room. If you're looking to the back of this room, if you're walking down that hallway, you'll see that there's a love sack, or at least in the US, they're like big bean bags, or a couch. That's your rectum. That's what holds your stool. That's in the very back of the room. Above that is a picture on the wall, which is your tailbone. If you look up to the ceiling, there is a chandelier, which is your uterus. And you'll notice that the flooring goes up the walls, and that's your third layer of your pelvic floor muscles. So I like to explain it this way so that you have some sort of idea of what this deep, dark abyss is. But I also really want to illustrate the complexity, because in a minute, I'll talk to you about why I don't agree with Kegels. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I created my online brand, No Kegels University. Because if you have this complex structure of these muscles and the orientation of them, just squeezing and relaxing is never going to be enough. So that, in a nutshell, is your anatomy. And that's how at least you have some sort of construct or a concept of how those muscles are oriented. So one of the things that I often will say about the pelvic floor, because the question comes up, well, why does it matter? I only need to deal with it if a problem comes up or if I have a baby. But the interesting thing is there's a lot of talk about full body workouts, right? We work your back and your biceps and your chest and your triceps and your booty and your legs and your core. And that's about all that we work. But I want to tell you a little bit about the pelvic floor, and then we'll move into the 3 phases of strengthening. And I want to outline just a couple of principles. The first one is that our pelvic floor is the only group of muscles in the body that has fibers that run in all 3 planes. And 3 planes is anything front to back, side to side, or diagonal or rotational. And so if you compare this to any other muscle group, well, we are 3D people living in a 3D world. And while I very well might be biased as to why the pelvic floor is such an important muscle group, I think it gives us good reason that it is a very important muscle group. Another consideration here as the pelvic floor relates to the pelvis is that the female pelvis, the bony structure, the angles are very different than a male pelvis. And the interesting thing is yes, it has to be different in order for us to be able to birth the baby if we choose to. But if we go to look at the research on how principles of strengthening and different strengthening programs, a lot of it is done for the male body, the male pelvis. But like I said, that female pelvis, that bony structure, it has different angles. So it needs different planes. And as I talk about this, I'll start to reference this again, but the female pelvis needs a lot of lateral movement, or that side to side, and it needs a lot more diagonal or rotational movement. In order to wake up that pelvic floor, because we have muscles of that pelvic floor, those fibers that run in all 3 planes, but also with the consideration of that pelvis, that bony structure, that also needs that input of that lateral or that side to side movement or that diagonal or rotational component, which I'll get to here in a little bit. So those are some considerations. And oftentimes I always want to raise my hand or protest when I read, oh, full body workout. And I often wonder, well, do you have the pelvic floor included in there? Not that I'm trying to be elitist, but I also know that it plays such a big role. It helps to support our organs. So if you think about a bottom of a box, if you will, if that pelvic floor is weak or tight, which is the same thing, by the way, that it's not supporting our organs inside of our abdomen and inside of our pelvis. That pelvic floor also helps to provide support to the pelvis in conjunction with the hip. So you'll hear me say later, and I probably sound it off like I say it all the time, like I'm an airline stewardess in the on an airplane or something, but whatever the hip does or doesn't do, it decides what the pelvic floor does or doesn't do. And we know that the hip muscles, our gluteus maximus, our glute med, our glute min, our piriformis, if you work out or even have any sense of working out, You know that those are very big muscle groups, they're very important muscle groups, but that pelvic floor should also be coming along for the ride to help those muscles do their job and vice versa. And so that
well, I'm so glad I don't have to be bringing my Kegels to the gym to be working my pelvic floor on a whole body workout day.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get to that at the end, so that there are some action. I'll give you a formula and you'll be able to use that and not have to do a Kegel anymore unless you want to, but
just imagine doing some squats over a tire just with some weights inside.
Yeah. And yeah, I'll actually use the squat as an example later in part of my method, just to show how you don't really have to probably reinvent the wheel of already what you're doing. There's just probably a couple of minor tweaks or modifications that you can do to say, or at least to feel like, oh, I worked my pelvic floor today and I got my workout in. There's no reason that they can't coexist together and have it be effective as well.
Nice. I like a time-consuming thing.
Same. Okay, so as far as that goes, the pelvic floor also helps with maintaining our bladder and our bowel control, meaning that we don't pee when we don't want to. And I'll even be as bold as to say, if you're leaking even just a little bit and it doesn't bother you, I still think that's not okay. If you're having bowel leakage or even like having excess gas that you can't control, that has to do with your pelvic floor. So anytime that and I'll reference this part again later, so this will be important, and it's one of the reasons that I don't think Kegels are effective, and you deserve better. And I'll tell you why, because if you can imagine those muscles, that the bottom of the pelvis, those pelvic floor muscles sense anytime we have that downward motion. So if you jump and land that jump, those pelvic floor muscles help as shock absorption, but they're also squeezing against our urethra, so we're not peeing. It's also squeezing against our rectum or our anal opening, however you want to say it or call it, so that we're not leaking pee or so that we're not leaking out stool or poop. So go ahead.
Mine are hella broken then. Because if they're supposed to stop that when you jump, mine are absolutely screwed. I just realized I haven't given anyone any context. So do you mind if I just briefly jump in?
Yeah, of course.
So at the start, I said I kind of got you on for a very selfish reason. And I want to be just completely honest with you guys. For anyone who's not been on a phone call conversation with me, you probably don't know yet. Anyone who has been on a single phone call conversation will know that I have an extremely, what I call, weak bladder. I don't know if that's going to be true. Maybe I'll change my terminology, but I have an extremely weak bladder. I have been on the NHS website, on the NHS waitlist for about 3 years now. I've experienced it since I was really young. And the doctor has recently said that I've got incontinence, urge incontinence. So basically, the most people will go from 0 to 10, and about 5 they'll go, right, okay, I need the toilet, and then about an hour later, or even half an hour later, they reach that 10. For me, I don't see 0 to 8. And then it's like I've got minutes to go, otherwise it will just happen. And I literally, my clients must get so annoyed with me. I'll be talking, I'm like, I've got to go pee, really sorry. And then so I have to always jump and run off. So, and I don't have kids. I've just turned 31. So I'm not the typical kind of person who should have incontinence issues. So there's just a little bit of background for anyone thinking, they might not necessarily qualify to need to watch this, or who am I to be here and have you in. But yeah, I just wanted to be open and honest with you guys that, I've had huge bladder issues for many, many years, ever since I was younger. I can't even drink one glass of water without needing to pee within 5 minutes.
Hey, well, first, I also want to say thank you for sharing that, because oftentimes so many women, they don't tell anyone, which I don't think is necessary. But I also feel like so many women believe that they are the only ones. They might think that they're gross. They might think that they're disgusting. They might think that their body's broken. They might feel like it's just almost like a martyrdom situation where, oh, I guess I just had to sacrifice my body in order to like bring these children into the world. But even in your shoes, I've had women that haven't had babies, or it's been a long time, and they'll say, yeah, I must be gross or something. Just lots of different reasons that their brain likes to come up with. And it really is a muscle thing. And I'll often say, if you, whether you had a baby or not, but let's say every 26 squat that you did, your leg gave out. Everyone in you wouldn't think you're gross. You wouldn't think you're disgusting. You wouldn't feel like you're broken. You would probably say, well, dang, I really need to get that leg stronger, or my glutes stronger, or my knee muscle, quad, hamstring, whatever. You just know, oh yeah, I just need to get it stronger. That's it. And when I hear someone tell me, like you said, Bianca, or patients or clients or people on the internet that will message me, which I love, by the way, you're welcome to it, that they'll say these things, and I immediately think, oh yeah, your pelvic floor is just not strong enough, which I realize for me, it seems very easy, but I'm going to give you my methods today. But that's all that it is. It's just muscles. And because these muscles, one of their many jobs, besides the pelvic floor contributing with orgasm, I missed that part. I don't know how I missed that part, because it's such a beautiful and pleasurable part. It does so many things. It just happens to control our bowel and our bladder. And nobody really likes to talk about pee or poop. I mean, I do it for a living, but we all do it. I emptied my bladder before I got on this call. I had a bowel movement this morning. My pelvic floor just happens to be strong enough, and it's just a muscle thing. So if you're here with Bianca feeling solidarity, but maybe you're not, which I mean, Bianca, you can say if you want people to admit or what have you, but there's so many women that struggle with it. It's just a muscle thing. That's it. It's just a muscle thing. Let me simplify it. Let me take some of the stress and burden off of it for you.
It's really good to know that it's just a pelvic floor thing, because I knew I should have grabbed them. I have medication sitting in my side cabinet, right? I've literally got, I'll show you now. I've got a bunch of them, but yes, this one, have you ever heard of this one? Betmiga, Mirabegron.
I wonder if it's different per country. No, I wonder.
It could be. So this one, yeah. So I went to the doctors, and straight away they were like, right, okay, so we're going to put you on some medication. And I was like, I don't want medication. I hate medication. As someone who is a massive advocate for healing through natural ways, plant-based foods, right? I hate taking medicine. Don't get me wrong, it is life-saving for people. It has changed people's lives. I get that, that's totally fine. But for me, I was just like, I want pelvic floor therapy, right? I didn't even know it was a thing until I met someone who told me about it. And straight away they gave me these tablets, and these are slow release, but they are designed to intercept with the receptors, right? So this is basically just playing around with the receptors, the receivers, what is that? Is that is that nerves?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, yeah, so these tablets are messing around with my nerves, when all it is a simple matter of coming to your Kegels University and going through that instead of taking mess.
Yes. And what are the side effects like with those? Do you have like dry mouth, constipation, any of that?
I don't really know. Well, I started taking them, and then I was like, no, I want to wait for my therapy. And then I started taking them again, because I basically just wet myself in public like 3 times in the space of 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should go back to taking those medications. I don't know. I don't really think about the side effects, so I'm not entirely sure. But I know that it actually just makes it harder to wee when I'm going. It doesn't stop the sensation. So I've still got that 8 to 10. I've not got like any more of that time there. But when I'm sitting on the toilet, it feels like it's taking about 5 minutes to come out.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah, I would call that a side effect also, because now because it's changing what your nerves are doing. It's changing how that bladder is functioning. So, well, while we're here, I have a little note over here so I don't get lost on this, but while we're here,
sorry, I keep
yes,
derailing you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Because it's real, and let's solve this as we go. So like you were saying, our bladder has a capacity of about 16 ounces or 2 to 2.5 cups of fluid. So as we're sitting here, our kidneys are filtering out all that fluid via the ureters into our bladder. Just think about a balloon. So it's slowly filling. One of its jobs, there is, like you said, nerves or sensory receptors that as that bladder starts to fill, it reaches a certain capacity and it sends a signal to our brain. Our brain sends a signal back down to that bladder and it causes that bladder to contract. So when we feel like we have the urge to go, that we need to empty our bladder, that's that bladder actually contracting. So while the pelvic floor plays a role, you should be able to, so the urge is a little bit separate than the pelvic floor, but I'll tie it all together. So we'll talk about the pelvic floor later, but that might be something, number one, to take a look at is, am I actually reaching capacity? So if you drink 32 ounces in an hour's time, they say that it's about, if you're pacing yourself of your fluid intake throughout the day, you should be going about every 2 to 2.5 hours. Now, I realize not everyone is perfect in pacing. I suck down 32 ounces in the first hour of my day. I am not going to be going to the bathroom every 2 to 2.5 hours because our bladder capacity is around 16 ounces. So the first question you can ask yourself is, do I actually need to go? Have I reached bladder capacity? If you have, go ahead and go. That's not a problem. We'll work on the pelvic floor and the timing of all that. But if you have that sensation and it's not, and you're like, no, I've only had 12 ounces, and that was like a really long time ago, maybe it's not time to go, or 10 ounces, not that long ago. Then you can ask yourself, well, am I consuming a bladder irritant? Which I will say it's different for everyone. So if you go to look up the list of bladder irritants, which can be anything spicy, acidic, so think marinara sauce, like if you're eating a pizza, I feel like that's a culprit that a lot of people miss. Alcohol is one, caffeine is one, artificial sweeteners is one, carbonation is one. And while I'm listing out all this list, if you're consuming any of those and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not saying you have to give it up, because I think there's a quality of life that maybe you might enjoy some of these things, but it may not be an irritant for you. And I'm really not saying give it up. So for me, in our garden, we have great tomatoes. I will go to the bathroom every 15 to 20 minutes because of the acidity of the tomatoes. Now, I am not giving those up because I love them. But when I'm in the clinic working with patients, or if I know I have a call like this, I am probably not consuming those, which gives me back power. So I get to say, when I need my body to be on point, I don't need to be bothered by anything. I just get to refrain. Or you can increase your fluid intake if you still want to do it, just to help flush that out so it's not irritating that bladder. That bladder, when it senses irritation, it will trick you, and that bladder will contract, even though the brain doesn't say so necessarily, to want to get it out. So think of when you have a sliver in your finger, the body produces that inflammatory response and wants to get it out. Our bladder's just doing the same thing. So that's another consideration you can take a look at. And I'll even add in there, stress can be a bladder irritant. And I am no expert in managing stress. In fact, I probably should go take a course or listen to somebody talk about that. But it might just be information for you to kind of manage. So the story I'll often tell as it relates to myself is not that I have a hard time getting to the bathroom on time, but anytime I travel, because I'm stressed to pack up my kids, to hope, like, please don't let me forget my toothbrush, because I always seem to forget, or my retainer or something. I get really stressed. And then of course I have to go to the bathroom all the time, which is not conducive to flying on a plane or driving in a car. So things like that, I can't necessarily help. Maybe you can do a better job of that, but that is another consideration. And then the last thing I'll say as it relates to how our bladder is functioning is you can use a tool that I like to call the 5 quick squeezes. So when our bladder is contracting, so remember when it fills, we should have enough time to get to the bathroom when we need to. So if you notice we have 30 more minutes on the call and you're like, oh gosh, I can't wait. What you can do, and I'll say it won't be perfect right away, but when our bladder's contracting, or urethra, or that tube that allows the urine to exit our body, our pelvic floor sits on the other end of it. So when our bladder's contracting that we have to go, and Bianca, maybe you have like 10 minutes left in a call or something, you can take that pelvic floor and squeeze it.
I wouldn't be able to wait 10 minutes.
One day you will. You'll squeeze that pelvic floor. So you'll contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax. So yes, technically that's a Kegel. I had someone call me out on that the other day. We're using it as a technique. We're not using it as a strengthening method, but as you're squeezing against that urethra, as it goes to that bladder, it sends a signal via the urethra to the bladder and calms it, and will buy you a little bit more time. So often, because it's summer here and it's hot and I'm drinking extra water, there's times that I'll look at my watch and think, oh my gosh, I have 10 more minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll squeeze my pelvic floor just to calm that bladder sensation, because it is really annoying. You can't think straight when your bladder, not that you knew this before till today, but that bladder's like, hey, come on, we gotta go. Come on, Bianca, like take me to the bathroom. And you can't think clear. Those 5 quick squeezes can help calm that bladder and give you a chance to get there, and like to get there on time or buy you more time. But the other thing that I'll add in there too is that right away, if your pelvic floor isn't strong enough, you may not have a crystal clear communication to that bladder yet. So don't give up. Eventually it will work and you'll think it's magic.
Wow, this is already such incredible information. I know you've kind of digressed onto a couple of things because I kind of derailed you, but this is already absolutely incredible. Yeah, I couldn't, if I'd noticed the time and I had 10 minutes left, I'd have to go. If I had 2 minutes, I literally had 2 minutes left the other day and I was like, I have to go. So I can't even hold on like that 2 minutes, which is so bad and so frustrating. And what you said about the stress, one thing that I find is so ironic is when I sense that I need to pee and I'm out, the stress and anxiety of that then perpetuates it straight away. So I don't feel like if I'm stressed in life or if I've got a lot on in that day, that's not the stress that actually makes it worse. What makes it worse is the stress of the whole bladder issue or the pelvic floor issue in itself. So when you said stress, I was like, yeah, for me, it's like a dog chasing its tail. It's like as soon as my bladder starts stressing out, I'm like, okay, where's the nearest toilet? When's going to be the nearest service station? You know, if I'm on public transport, where's the next stop? How am I then going to get back en route? And yeah, that's the stress that then makes it worse for me.
Yes, you're right. It is ironic and it is frustrating, but I think you'll notice. Take a look at what you're consuming. Start asking yourself, like, do I actually need to go, or is my bladder just irritated? Can I make it wait? Can I I would probably practice at home where it's safe. So if you do have some leakage, that you're not standing there in line at the store or something and you're like, well, clean up on aisle whatever because you're waiting. So
just carry around a wet floor sign with me just in case it ever happens, or when it happens, should I say? Yes,
not forever, though. Okay, does that kind of give you a little bit of help on that?
Oh my God, amazing! So much, okay. So much so far. Much
All
more
right.
than any of the work, the stuff that I've spoken to the doctor about, and I've waited 3 years for my appointment. They have just been absolutely useless, and you have given me so much more information than any of them so far. Okay. So thank you.
Okay, well, more is coming. So kind of
good. I'm going to stop interrupting.
Oh, no, that's okay. So kind of to continue, I just really the premise that pelvic floor needs a lot more. Oh, the jumping up and down. I think that's where I left off. So that pelvic floor should contract against the weight coming downwards. So when you were little, we jumped up and down and we didn't have leakage, but then all of a sudden we have babies, and having a baby is such a natural thing. Like every animal is birthing a baby or birthing an egg or something, and it's fine. They're not running around with leakage afterwards. So why do we? Which that's a whole other story for another time, or take a listen to my podcast. I yammer on about that quite a bit in there and hop on that soapbox. But Kegels are not going to work, because if you can imagine, so, and really, if any of you went to a personal trainer and they said, hey, quit lifting the weights, I just want you to like squeeze and relax, and then squeeze and relax, and that's all you need to do. Well, one, you should ask for your money back, but two, you know better than that. So somehow we have kind of gone underneath this guise that squeezing our pelvic floor and relaxing is enough. So let's just say, for math's sake, because A, I'm not that good at it, and B, if I sat down and did the math and the physics, which I know how to do, I don't want to do it. But let's just say someone weighs 100 pounds, and when you land a jump, let's just say it's half your body weight, which is not true. I'm being very generous here, but squeezing and relaxing your pelvic floor, doing a Kegel. My question always is that enough? Is that strengthening the pelvic floor enough to manage 50 pounds of pressure landing to squeeze against that urethra so we're not peeing? No way. No, that's not enough, right? So that's where I started diving in, because I realized, number one, I wanted to do a freaking good job for my patients early on. And I realized Kegels, even though that's what the research said to do, it didn't work for all my patients. It was taking forever. And I wasn't satisfied. And maybe that's my perfectionism. Maybe that's my self-worth issues coming up. I don't really know, probably, let's be honest, that's probably is. So I started diving in to figure out, okay, what's actually happening with that pelvic floor? And that's when I started to figure out, okay, well, naturally and physiologically, how does this pelvic floor work? Which I've kind of introduced all this already. The fibers that run in all three planes, the fact that our pelvic floor contracts in response to that vertical or that downward pressure, the fact that our pelvic floor, which research shows this part too, time and time again, but we just seem to ignore it for some reason, that whatever the hip does or doesn't do decides what that pelvic floor does or doesn't do. So that's when I have put this all together. And that's when I was pregnant with my first, and I was like, gosh dang, I feel so guilty that I am not even worried about my pelvic floor, because I know what to do. And I felt bad about that. And then I told my husband, and he's like, well, you could help more people. And I said, but I want to be a mom. I want to be home with my kid. How do I help? And my husband said, well, why don't you go online? And I said, nobody wants to hear from me. I talk too much. I talk too, thank you, Bianca. And then he's like, but you have a wait list. This has been the 4th clinic that you've helped build. You can do this, babe. And I'm so glad he said that. And that's when I started, because I knew, okay, well, I can help anyone that comes to me in person. How do I translate this to lots of different women? And so I ran a beta group while I was pregnant. I literally was like puking and then like typing up the program for the week to send out to them. And anyways, it was a whole thing. But the wild thing,
whereas I'm peeing and typing it up, peeing and typing it up.
Yes, solidarity in that, working through the hard times, which I'm so glad I did, because the wild thing was that my beta group, number one, was terrible at doing anything that I asked them to do. They were terrible. But their comments to me, because I would hound them, like, I need you to tell me how this week went. I mean, these women were like barely doing half of what I asked them to do. And they're like, yeah, my leakage is 75% better. It's 50% better. I haven't leaked in 2 weeks. All this stuff. And I'm like, can I use this information? Like, is this actually a thing? And so here we are. So what I want to walk you through is what I would like to call the 3 phases of strengthening the pelvic floor. And phase 1, so there's 3, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is that those tissues need to move and move well. I'll get to that in a second. Phase 2 is actually strengthening the pelvic floor. And then phase 3 is maintenance. And the reason that phase 1 and phase 3 have to be there, not just the middle part, is number one, if you have torn, you have scar tissue. If you had an episiotomy with that baby, even a C-section scar, because scar tissue does not stay local, and scar tissue has what I like to call the Elsa effect. Remember in the movie when she does like, psh, and then like freezes everything? Because I have worked on the pelvic floor for over 13 years, my opinion of this is very different than how many women or fitness influencers are telling you, well, here's how I healed my pelvic floor, and I can help you too. Without being crude, my fingers have been on thousands of pelvic floors over the years. I know what it feels like. I know what they're doing. And so while I'm not trying to be elitist about this, I've literally been in it. I've been in the weeds. I've been in the pelvic floor. I get it. In these pelvic floors, once we get that scar tissue moving, if those muscles happen to be tight, whether it's a scar tissue thing, whether it's I'm having pain with sex kind of a thing, once we get that scar moving and we get rid of that Elsa effect, those muscles literally present as though they were a 6-week, 8-week, 10-week postpartum pelvic floor. And their youngest might be 7 years old. So for 7 years, their pelvic floor was, and I'm getting chills just talking about it, even though I've been doing this for so long, that pelvic floor is held in time, frozen in time, right? The Elsa effect, like they just had that baby. And so that's why phase 1 is so freaking important, that those tissues, whether that's a scar, whether that's tissues in general, they have to move and move well. And whether you've had a baby or not, some women will say, oh yeah, I didn't tear. But one of the things that we know is that anytime we experience negative emotion, so anxiety, stress, and unfortunately, sexual assault and rape is a thing that I wish we could eradicate, but that's a conversation for a different day. Those negative emotions, which rightfully so, by the way, cause that pelvic floor to contract. So I just had a patient yesterday. She's like, I don't understand. She's having all these problems, but it all has to do with, she just felt like she needed to be perfect and to be a good girl. And the fear of messing up caused that pelvic floor to contract. So something totally unexpected that someone might not consider. But if you even slightly resonate with that, you, Bianca, or, any of your group members, then chances might be high that pelvic floor is tight and held. So that's where that phase 1 comes into play. And I know most of you know that if you saw me working out in the gym and I'm just standing there doing mini squats and you're like, oh, good for you, Pauli, nice work. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to build a booty. You'd be like, get your butt down. You have to have that full range of motion. That's where that phase 1 is so freaking important, is because you have to have full range of motion of those muscles before you can strengthen. So I'll talk to you a little bit about a couple of those things to help get started on that process. Phase
Pauli,
2.
I'm signing up. You've got me as a client. Honestly, this is absolutely incredible. And I'm going to be extremely biased because I've had pelvic floor, or I thought bladder issues, for so many years of my life, since before when I was at school. So, you've given me so much more information than I ever have received ever. And
good. And we're not even to the meat and the potatoes of this yet. So this is so great. So that's phase. Oh,
she doesn't mean meat, guys. I promise.
She
means lentils.
Oh my gosh. No, sorry.
No, I'm joking. Joking.
I am from the country. We eat meat. I grew up eating. Anyways, yes, that's like blasphemous. I'm so sorry. To the heart of this, to the core of this, oh my gosh, of course I would say that.
Oh my God, I'm just winding you up.
Good, you should. Okay, and I'm a pretty easy target because I'm pretty unaware, but so that's phase 1. So then we move on to phase 2, which is strengthening. And generally, if you follow a strengthening program that's effective, it's about 2 to 3 months, and you're about 80 to 90% at minimum of where you need to be, which I'll get to that here in a second. The core of this, not any animals. And then phase 3 is maintenance. And this is one that I also feel like so many women miss. I was on the phone the other day with a friend of a friend. She's an athletic trainer. She runs a multi-million-dollar business in the United States. Athletic trainer. So she knows the body. She understands rehab. And we just were talking business, and she's like, I just don't understand why anyone would sign up to work with you with your maintenance program. Because once you solve it, you solve it. And I'm like, hold on. Just as well as anyone else does, you can't just strengthen a muscle and be like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I reached my 1 rep max. I'm just going to give up for life now. Absolutely not. No, that does not make sense. Okay, yeah.
Oh, anyways, so that was a very interesting conversation because I'm with somebody who knows better. I'm not very patient, I suppose. So that's where that maintenance comes into play. And that is something that if you're curious about the programs I have, I have all sorts of things, but I don't want to take that part of the call. Although my big program is on sale for the next 2 weeks because I'm adding a lot more to it. So that is great timing on this. But anyways, so phase 2, the strengthening part. So I like to utilize what I call the VAB3 method. So V as in vertical, A is for above, B is for below, and 3 is all 3 planes. So the V is for vertical, because if you remember, one of the jobs of the pelvic floor is that it contracts in response to that downward pressure. So we're going to utilize that. That's how our body works naturally. That's how it works physiologically. We need to use that. So we're going to come back to that vertical, but that's that component. A is for above. And sometimes I feel like this one gets misconstrued sometimes, but the A for above really just means anything happening above the pelvis. And you'll notice as I give you some examples at the end, is that a lot of times I'll just use like the arm above the body just to change the load as it travels through the rest of the body into the pelvis. So that part is pretty easy, but I think it seems confusing upon first hearing about it. B for below is back to that idea, it's the truth, that whatever the hip does or doesn't do, it decides what the pelvic floor does or doesn't do. So if you are doing an exercise that involves the hip, and I should clarify, in standing, not necessarily like doing a bridge or laying down and doing like a leg lift, I mean in weight bearing. So if you're standing, your hip, your knee, your ankle, if your knee is working in standing, chances are your hip is, and chances are your ankle. So the important thing to know here is that utilizing that B for below, if it's something is happening that's in weight bearing below the pelvis, it probably is pulling that pelvic floor into play. And then 3 is for all 3 planes. I mentioned this earlier, that whatever our pelvic, or that because of the fibers that run in all 3 planes, which is front to back, side to side, and then that diagonal or rotational component, we need to have those components in what we're doing. And so with this VAB3 method, you can take any exercise, and I'll give you some examples here, and you can hold it up to the VAB3 method. And as long as you have 2 of the 4, then you can constitute that as a pelvic floor strengthening exercise. So for example, you had mentioned squats. Well, as you're squatting up and down, okay, well, that's B for below, but that's just one of them. So how could we change that? Could we add like a jump squat or a squat jump in there? So now we have that vertical component, and now we're jumping off a stair or like a box onto the ground. So we have that vertical, but then we're landing into that squat. You could count that as a pelvic floor strengthening exercise. So you could also take that squat and say, okay, well, what if we changed our foot position? What if we staggered and still stuck our bum back and bent both of our knees? Well, now we're changing the foot position front to back, but it's a different angle. Or what if we, if anyone's a dancer, this might resonate, but like, what if you went through like first position and squatted second position, third position, fourth position, fifth position? Or what if you squatted with your toes out like a sumo squat? What if you squatted with your toes in? And for some of these, you don't need to load this up with a bunch of weights. You don't need to be in the Smith machine. You don't need to have a barbell on. This very well could just be with body weight. So you could do toes out, you could do toes in, you could do staggered, you could do wide, you could do narrow, because we're adding all those 3 planes in, right? The front to back, we're adding the side to side by adding that wider position. We're adding diagonals by toeing out or toeing in with that squat. And as long as that knee is directed towards that second toe, your knee is safe. Don't worry about that part. So now we've taken that squat and said, okay, well, there's the B, right? Because we're using our hip and our knee and our ankle, but then we're changing the foot position. Now we're pulling in all 3 planes. You could also take that squat to add that A in, is you could reach overhead. So as you go to squat, you simultaneously reach overhead. You're changing the load down through the entire body. And so that hip has to work differently than you just squatting regularly. But then you could also take, so here's where I think it always cracks me up when I have a client or a patient that says, okay, just give me all the pelvic floor exercises I need to do, and then I can just move on. You literally could create any thousands, hundreds, millions, just, and you'll see this here. So pretend you have a clock on the wall. This is one of my favorites, because a lot, again, going back to that female pelvis needs a lot of that lateral work, that diagonal work. So if you're squatting and reaching overhead, well, what if you consider that there's a clock on the wall, and as you reached overhead, that hand was reaching to 12 o'clock, and then you stood back up. And then what if your arm reached across your body to 1 o'clock on that wall with that hand, right? So you're having to cross. Well, your squat's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. But now that hip, now that pelvic floor is getting that 3-plane motion, which I'm getting a little sciencey and like into the weeds of this, but it's okay that your pelvis isn't perfect, because if you think about when you go to the grocery store and you're having to pull a bunch of things out of the cart, or I think about when I have to pull laundry out of the dryer, my squat is not perfect like it is when I work out, and that's okay because that's real life. One of my other favorites is, I call it the jumping jack asterisk. And you'll notice that I like to use clocks to cover, somehow use a clock or somehow use an asterisk in the exercise, because then you're getting all 3 planes, and you can just do whatever exercise you're doing in all 3 planes. And chances are you're using your legs. And so that just kind of takes care of it. So the jumping jack asterisk is, that's the plus sign superimposed on the X. So if you take your feet and you're jumping them in and out like a jumping jack, we all know how to do that. But then we jump them forward, and then we jump them to the ends of the X. Well, then we could do it slow. We could do it fast. We could reach overhead every time we jumped, which is going to change the load. So now we have the B, because our legs are having to work. You could even land in that jump squat, wherever your feet are landing in that asterisk, in like a squat position, just to increase the load, to increase the level of difficulty. But as you're reaching overhead, well, now we have A for above. Anyways, I could go on about this for a really long time, because and this is one of my favorite parts. I love exercise creation, but that's how
I don't want you to give away so much of your value as well, because your time and your value, your squat, I was going to say Squat University, then you've probably heard of them, haven't you? Kegels University, like, this is all of your knowledge. So, I as much as I want this information, I also don't want you to give too much away.
No, I don't feel that way at all. And I think part of it too is obviously, like, so my big course that's on sale right now, it's called Bye Bye Leakage, a comprehensive program for pelvic floor strengthening, I think is what it is the new name of it. There's a lot in there, and to like kind of work through, I don't feel like I'm giving away anything, because if you can take this VAB3 method, or at least like phase 1, and kind of get working on that, and then start working on phase 2, are you going to get there as fast as you are working with me or one of my programs? Probably not. But if you're not in a position yet it really is part of my mission. I just strongly believe that women need to know effective and like successful strategies to strengthen their pelvic floor. Like, could you go on YouTube and like kind of put together a strengthening program? Like, it probably would be semi-effective, maybe, probably. But if you go to pay to work with someone, you're paying for like the speed of it and their knowledge, and to have their brain on it, and like specific programming. So I don't feel that way at all. Because if there's several women that are like, yeah, I can't afford to work with her right now, great, go get started on this. And then one day when you're ready, then come back and see me. But at least you're taking steps. And I loved how you said one of the benefits for you is to have confidence. I think as women, and maybe it could be me, but there's some topics where we're like, oh, I need to be better at blank, whatever blank is. And I think a lot of us, whether we know about the pelvic floor or not, we feel like we should be doing something to recover after baby, or something, right? Whatever that blank is. And now if you can just take that VAB3 method and feel confident that, okay, well, at least I'm doing something, that is really empowering. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to help.
Sorry, I couldn't get to the unmute button fast enough. this is absolutely incredible. You know, I honestly thought that strengthening in the pelvic floor was literally sitting here, squeeze in, letting go, squeeze in, letting go. And I find that exercise quite difficult. And I thought I found it difficult because I had a weak pelvic floor. But to me, it feels weird. And, you know, I'm doing it now while I'm talking. It just feels weird. And I personally prefer gym squats, overhead squats. So all of that sort of stuff is just like, oh, give me the juicy stuff. That's all good for me. And I quite enjoy that. So some people might be thinking, oh God, you know, I have to join a gym. But like you said, you don't need to load up on bars. You don't need to load up on weights. Even just doing body weight variations of what you said would be really useful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Another free resource that I offer is I have a Facebook group as well, No Kegels University Sorority, where I do weekly trainings and weekly pelvic floor exercises. So I have some patients that are like, yeah, I can't afford to do any more. And so they just utilize the pelvic floor exercises every week. And I've been very blunt in a loving way. Like, are you getting there as fast? No. But also be so proud of yourself that you're trying to make that effort. And I want to reward that. Here, come join my group for free. And I'm handing it out every week.
So. Amazing. So what was the maintenance side of it then?
Oh, yes. So the maintenance is really taking a look at what you like to do. So I have some women that are like, oh my gosh, the thought of adding this because you have to put work in to strengthen a muscle. Just like if you declutter a spot, you have to put a lot of work in right away, but that maintenance is a lot easier. And so the first step with maintenance, thank you for keeping me on track on that, is to ask yourself, do I, like you said, well, you like being in a gym. So having you do extra things outside the gym that you can't combine is probably not going to be enjoyable for you. It's probably not going to work in terms of maintenance. You might fall off the wagon or something. So the first thing is to ask yourself, well, what is ideal for me? I personally like to dance. And so I use that for a lot of my maintenance work, besides the taping and stuff I do for my group and patients and whatever. But I like to dance because that has the V, it has the B, it has the 3, and occasionally it has the A, depending on what in the world I'm doing with my hands. So for me, that's enjoyable. I love to do it. I'm always doing it. But I also have some friends that are, and patients like, I am not going to a hip hop class. Are you kidding me? I would never. Okay, great. That is probably not a maintenance idea for you. But I have some women that end up either buying one of my maintenance program. I have a membership that has maintenance in there that you just follow. It's all written out for you. Just follow it. It's different every week. It's a monthly subscription. I also have a program called No Kegels Fitness that has kind of going back to that full body workout, right? When I get my panties in a bunch, like, what is the pelvic floor included? Yes, in these full body workouts. So I have some women that just kind of cycle that in as part of their weekly work. In any of my strengthening programs, like if we're trying to reach a goal, my suggestion is 4 to 5 times a week, 10 to 15 minutes. But once you've reached your goal, well, maintenance, and that's a little bit different for everybody, I suggest about 3 times a week, about 10 minutes. So if you're doing hip hop dancing like I am, or doing some exercises on the side, or you said, well, I really like working in the gym, then so for me, that my pelvic floor maintenance is taken care of. But for you, you might be, okay, well, I am going to keep in the gym. I would just make sure you have some exercises to tack on to what you're doing once you reach your goals, so that you're just maintaining that. And I feel like a lot of women in the gym, they always like end with core, like 2 times a week, 3 times a week. You can just cycle some of that core stuff in, or let me know and we can combine some core and pelvic floor exercises together so that you can just whip them all out together and it's not added time to your life.
I love that. I love, because I actually hate doing core. It just drives me mad. I would rather spend an hour in the squat rack, an hour doing deadlifts, an hour on lat pull downs. I don't know why. I just love those big muscle groups. So then going and doing core, I just loathe it. I'm just like, nah, I don't want to do it. Like sit-ups and crunches and stuff, that's just a big no. And that's actually something that I was going to say. I was always told that planks are the best thing for your internal core? Just very briefly, is that a thing, like the internal core, external core? I also have another question while I'm here. Maybe they're separate, but I find that I have quite visible abs, but I feel like there's a layer of fat underneath it. Like a lot of the time, like I feel like, so like a lot of the time, like my abs are quite visible, but they're quite protruded. Is that the difference between the internal and external core? And you don't need to go into this today if it's long-winded.
No, I'll keep it short. This could be an entire another presentation.
Podcast idea.
Not to like necessarily be like, well, keep asking me on. Just to illustrate, like, it is complex. So as far as a stationary plank, I don't personally love it because I don't find the carryover. Because when in our life are we like pushing with our hands and pushing with our, like if we're pushing a fridge, like if we pull out the fridge to clean behind it and then we're pushing, let's not even talk about when I've cleaned my fridge. I don't know. So I don't love it. But what we do know about the core is anytime our arms move and anytime our legs move, our core turns on. External core, internal core, or if you really want to get into the weeds of it, if you look up you have a reactive core and you have an anticipatory core. So that's a whole other topic. So I don't love the plank, but I love a dynamic plank. And so one of my favorites that I'll tell people, Twister. Are you familiar with Twister? Like the game where you spin and
I mean, oh yeah.
Okay. So just pretend you're on a Twister mat and then you be as obnoxious as you want to be and like right arm, left. So you're in a plank and you're moving your legs, you're moving your arms. Well, now you're getting all three planes, which is probably getting your pelvic floor, by the way. Now we're getting the internal core, the external core, because the more obnoxious you are with where you're putting your hands and feet, you're now recruiting a lot more muscle groups. So I would prefer a dynamic plank because you're going to get more bang for your buck because you deserve more than just doing the stationary plank. So that's what I'll say on that. And then as far as when you're talking about like your abs are visible, but there's like a layer of adipose tissue or fat, potentially, and this kind of falls into phase 1 of pelvic floor strengthening of those tissues moving. I didn't necessarily talk about this, but you might have some restrictions of your skin or your fascia or your muscle. And then you have a larger organ underneath called your greater omentum. If your belly is not malleable or pliable, that might be something to work on, which, not to be like that girl, but it's showing up in one of the bonus programs inside Bye Bye Leakage, Diastasis Recti 101, which I know you're not dealing with, but that'll be in that section. Because a lot of women, we're very cute. Wait, so like the high-waisted leggings, which sign me up, I'll wear those every day of the week. So a lot of us now, or we want to keep our tummy flat, that a lot of us do what they call ab gripping, or we just try to suck that belly in. The belly is designed to move and to flow and to have pressure, which plays a role into your pelvic floor function actually. And so more than likely, there's probably some restrictions through there, which would probably play a role. And I'm just taking a stab in I'm just kind of taking a guess. That might be part of your urgency stuff as well. But we can talk about that later too.
I need to have a full-on conversation with you after this. Okay, so I've already dropped in the comments just while you said that. For some reason it froze. So I was like, okay, I wonder if I can utilize this. My internet's spazzing out. So I've dropped in the comments a link to Twister. I think that was a great idea, and Twister is a great idea to incorporate the kids, incorporate a little bit of fun, and also that I don't know why I was just like, that's such a great idea. So I dropped in a link to Twister.
Oh, good.
I've already dropped in your link to the 3 reasons why Kegels don't work and what will. Cool. So your guidebook, ebook, is that right? I think my internet is spazzing out, and I'm really sorry if it is.
That's okay.
So my internet's definitely cutting out. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, and then I'll message you on WhatsApp. It's definitely shitting itself. Oh no, you seem to be back now. Is there anything else in terms of like your podcast or anything? Did you want to send me the link and I can drop them in the description box?
Yeah, I'll send you the link to my podcast. I'll send you my Instagram. I welcome any questions. I'm happy. I have I call it your pelvic floor's next step. It's just a quick free 15-minute phone call with me to kind of decide. And then if anyone's interested, not that I'm yes, I am trying to promote it because I don't know if it'll ever be offered for this low again, but
Go for it.
It's $399. It's normally $549. It's well worth over $3,000. My big course, Bye Bye Leakage. I'll share with you the code. It's for it ends August, not this Friday, but next Friday. It's either August 3rd or August 4th at midnight, but I'll send that link in the code so that if anyone wants to get in on that deal, or even feel free to schedule a call with me or message me and we can figure out if it's a good fit, because I don't want you to buy something that you don't think is a good fit, or if you're worried about spending that money and making sure that it's the right thing for you. So
is it like a self-paced course, or is it like once you've purchased it, you've got lifetime access?
It is a self-paced course. Once you have it for life. And then any updates I do, because I can't seem to sit still on it, like as I study and learn more, or, oh man, my patients are responding really well to this and we're speeding things up. That's one of the reasons I'm going back in and changing it. So chances are high I'm going to change it again in a year. And so it'll be bigger and better than before.
Mm-hmm.
The price might go up. And so once you have that access, you have it for life.
Amazing. We've already been over an hour. My internet is absolutely just breaking apart, probably because this has been so jam-packed with information. I've absolutely loved this. I'm going to come on your course. I want to be one of your clients. This has been absolutely insane. Obviously, I have needed most of this information, so I could be quite selfish here. But this has been fantastic. I very much appreciate your time, your energy. Send me those links through on Messenger and I'll drop them in there below. As Pauli said, if you have any questions, just tag her in the comments below or get hold of her. If you're struggling to get hold of her, tag her in the comments below. Either way, we'll get your questions to her. So I'm going to jump, but thank you so much, Pauli. You've been absolutely incredible. I really appreciate you and I can't wait to work with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, hopefully I talked to you a lot of soon and I can help.
Hopefully so. Take care and thank you so much.
You too. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.